talking, and I need more of a show right now. It's time that you made your mind up, 'cause lately all it ever does is change. Feels like we're only talking, going round and around, back around. I will fight like no other every day. I won't stop like the others. I will stay. 'Cause now is the right time, and I'm feeling alright. I'm playing your game like I know I can win right now. It's a final. You got me up tonight, 'cause loving you is like I'm walking a tightrope so high. I won't be turning around, no, I won't be turning around. It's the right time. I'm feeling alright. I'm playing your game like I will win tonight. I think I'll do it on my way. I'm gonna show you what I'm going through, get you out of your comfort zone, 'cause I need more of the truth right now. It's time that you made your mind up, 'cause lately all it ever does is change. Feels like we're only talking, going round and around, back around. I will fight like no other every day. I won't stop like the others. I will stay. 'Cause now is the right time, and I'm feeling alright. I'm playing your game like I know I can win right now. It's a final. You got me up tonight, 'cause loving you is like I'm walking a tightrope so high.
It's been, well over an hour since that race finished, and I still have no idea what we just witnessed. Wow, unbelievable. Fantastic. How are we all doing in chat? Welcome to the F1 word and to some race reaction to the 2020 Italian Grand Prix. And I don't think anybody in a million years would have predicted what we got today. Insane race. Absolutely insane. Let's try and stay composed and stay nice and calm. I'm going to be joined by Dan from F1/E Reviews very, very shortly to react to that race. Not a review, of course, just a reaction. But I think there's plenty to react to be perfectly fair. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Should we start with the race result? If you haven't watched the race, by the way, and you're thinking, F1 is so boring and predictable, we'll just watch the race reaction, not bother watching the race. Please go and watch it, because I don't think you'll quite believe what I'm about to put on screen now. Pierre Gasly is the winner of the 2020 Italian Grand Prix. Unbelievable. How many times have I said that in the first 3 minutes of this stream? Insane. Carlos Sainz in second place, less than half a second behind as they went across the line. That was a tense final few laps, wasn't it? Wow. Lance Stroll in third place, 3.3 seconds off the lead. That's a podium, just to remind you there. Pick yourselves up off the floor of Pierre Gasly, Carlos Sainz and Lance Stroll. One of the youngest podiums in history, and I don't think there's many people too unhappy about that tonight. Incredible. Lando Norris, a very brilliant fourth place. We'd be praising him, wouldn't we, for that any other time? But yeah, fourth place for him. Fifth place for Bottas. Disappointing from him, I'd say, but we'll get on to him later. We'll do all the good stuff first, of course, the top three. Daniel Ricciardo in sixth, Lewis Hamilton only seventh, but that only tells about a third of the story of his race. Eighth for Esteban Ocon, ninth for Daniel Kvyat, and Sergio Perez taking the final point for 10th place. Nicholas Latifi so close to points for Williams in the final race for the family. No disrespect to anybody ahead apart from the top three. Maybe if one of those could have retired or had a problem, it would have been great, wouldn't it? That would have been the icing on the cake, the cherry on the icing on the cake today if we could have got a point for Williams. But still, P11 for Latifi, career equalling best result as well. Romain Grosjean in 12th place with Kimi Raikkonen 13th, was running up in second or third place at one point. George Russell 14th, Alexander Albon down there in 15th place, and Antonio Giovinazzi last of the classified finishers. Your retirements list, mechanical issue for Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc, hefty shunt into the wall at Parabolica, hopefully. All okay there. He seemed to be got out the car and was fine in that respect, and I think he's done some interviews, so hopefully all okay there. Kevin Magnussen didn't finish either, but I think possibly driver of the day, Kevin Magnussen, and Sebastian Vettel had a brake failure. No major accident, but came into the pits and had to retire. Wow. Right. Deep breath. Good evening, Dan, mate. Little bit better than Spain and Belgium, I say that one. How are you feeling?
Good evening, mate. Good evening, everyone. I'm still a bit speechless. A little bit choked as well, to be honest.
Yeah.
That was some proper F1 magic today. So thank you very much for having me, because I think we're gonna have a blast this evening.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely going to have a blast. That's, wow. There it is on screen there. Pierre Gasly, race winner. And, you know, we came into this weekend, a lot of people talking about Formula One being boring and predictable. Of course, I'll use that horrible phrase that I keep using in situations like this: one swallow doesn't make a summer. It's just one race, but still, I mean, you can't take anything away from that boy on screen there. And I think, okay. Issues for Hamilton, issues for Bottas not getting through the field and a poor start, and none of the top contenders really at the front, but he made absolutely the most of that. Great call from AlphaTauri, it's a Toro Rosso, AlphaTauri, to pull him into the pits just before the safety car was deployed. Talk more about that later, but absolutely flawless drive to be there to, say it with me, chat, capitalise on the luck when it fell his way. Stunning.
A classic F1 word line there. You're not wrong, though. You're really not. And the first phase of the race seems so long ago. I mean, first corner, lap one, he made contact with Alex Albon. That seems years ago that happened. And from there, pretty much, a faultless drive. Yes, he was caught in that train at the beginning of cars that couldn't really overtake each other. But since that restart, past Stroll straight away, had a great restart. Couldn't get Hamilton. But when Hamilton went in, world of his own, and the amount of pressure he must have been under anyway would have been intense. But with Carlos Sainz hounding him down as well, Yeah, I'm going to say it a lot, but a real special drive that was from Gasly. And did you say a second ago, zero point 0.4 over the line?
Yeah.
About half a second. Ridiculous.
It was quite a conflicting feeling. I don't know about you, Dan, or you guys in chat, or anybody watching. I was watching that and I was on my feet for the last 20 laps. No, I was on my feet for all of it because I just could not relax. And I'm kind of thinking, well, I really want Pierre to do this because of everything he's been through in F1 and what a way to keep bouncing back. He's been stunning all season and deserves a mega result. But then you've got Carlos Sainz, you're going, how amazing would it be for Sainz, who's going to Ferrari next year, to win at Monza in a McLaren? And we've not seen McLaren win since 2012. And you think, that's brilliant. And then you're going, it would also be wicked if Lance Stroll took the win. And it's so conflicting. But I have to be honest, as much as I love Carlos Sainz, and of course I love Lance Stroll, I never shut up talking about how much better I think he is than people give him credit for. I was right behind Pierre for that win today. I had to be. As I was for his podium in Brazil. It's nothing against any other driver, but I just think his story arc in Formula One is something we hear so much about. It's so unique almost, isn't it, to him? I know Kvyat got dropped from Red Bull, but for Gasly to lose all of that credit, if you like, and all of people's not support, but I suppose the hype, kind of people talking about how good he was when he went to Red Bull and then kind of falling away and losing that and then getting in the Toro Rosso and showing he's still got it, getting that podium in Brazil, performing exceptionally all season so far. And then to do that, and like you say, the pressure, Dan, I can't imagine. He said he must have almost lost it about 10 times in the last few laps because he was having to push so hard. It wasn't like situations we've seen in the past with surprise winners where they've kind of got a lead through a safety car and they've been 10 or 15 seconds up the road. He had sights on him for the whole thing. He couldn't make one mistake, and I think the way he soaked up that pressure is phenomenal. It really is. And he was quite emotional out there. Of course he was, and so was the team. But I'm surprised he wasn't just on that podium in floods of tears. I mean, I practically was, and I'm at home in Lincoln, so I don't know how he wasn't. Incredible, absolutely phenomenal. Such a nice guy as well. I always say that about drivers, don't I? He's a nice guy, but he is, and just the perfect way to really, yeah, I don't know, Dan. I can't really say any more than that. Absolutely stunning drive. And I don't want to get too much into driver talk, but I'd imagine there's at least going to be a conversation tonight at Red Bull. I mean, there has to be, surely.
Yeah, and I've just seen that picture come up on screen. I don't know if mine's a little bit delayed, where he sat on the podium.
Yeah.
I think that just tells you everything about this journey this man has been on. You touched on it there about him moving up to Red Bull, being demoted, and you said, Gasly really crumbled under that pressure of moving back. And the last 12 months anyway, and especially in 2020, before this race, I think a lot of people I think we spoke about it last weekend, about him being driver of the season. And then he goes and does this as well as all the other drives he's done this year. He has grown so much as a driver since that demotion. And the pressure today, for sure, so intense, pretty much all the way through, because he even had Kvyat on his heels in the early stages. But the way he's been able to bounce back has been incredible. That podium at the end of last year was something special. And this is just that little bit better than last season. Ferrari had their issues today, and for Pierre, pretty much carrying the flag of Italy, as well as being the first, I think, French driver since 1996, so the first in my lifetime. Sadly, it's not Grosjean on the top step, but I'll take Gasly. Yeah, again, it really was faultless. Could have been so many different times today where he made a mistake. He may not have been quite so brave on that restart. We had Kimi Räikkönen fighting in the podium positions. I mean, I think that tells you what a crazy race this was. But yeah, faultless. You certainly won't hear me say that a million more times today.
I will say super quickly, when you see most polls come up on screen in that little stat in the bottom left-hand corner, ignore it. It's 94 for Hamilton, not 93. I'm going to say it before anybody says it. There you go. But anyway, yeah, I mean, phenomenal. Absolutely. Like I say, Räikkönen up there fighting. It's like, Kimi, what are you doing? You're going to get a nosebleed. It's been a while since we've seen you there, mate. But, I mean, Alfa Romeo, Alfa Tauri, they're fighting for wins, and Alfa Tauri winning the race. You've said their Italian team. Ferrari, nowhere. Obviously Seb's brake issue and the massive accident for Charles. So I don't know what caused Charles' accident for sure. So we'll wait and see on that one. But brake failure for Seb, not his fault at all. But how must they be feeling tonight? Looking at an Italian, I mean, I'm sure they'll be happy for Pierre, but Ferrari's home turf, isn't it, really? I know Italian team in Alfa Tauri and Italian team in Alfa Romeo, but clearly there's the strongest performers today, so it's just so bizarre. If somebody said to me this morning, hey Sean, Gasly will win today, I would probably still be laughing, to be honest. I wouldn't have believed it for a second. And yeah, Olivier Panis, 96 Monaco Grand Prix was your last French winner, Dan, so Grosjean's come close a couple of times, to be fair. You know, he nearly did it. Not today. Good to see him nice and racy. We'll talk about him a bit later. Carlos Sainz is second place. Kind of, I think Sky said it. It sort of sums up how far McLaren have come, that Carlos Sainz is happy with second, but disappointed with the win. And can I say as well, I am so pleased that Carlos came over team radio when his engineer was like, you're P2, let's keep it clean. Like Perez a few years ago, or many years ago now, in Malaysia chasing down Alonso when he's in a Sauber. I'll just take it easy, second place, we don't want anything stupid. And Carlos saying, I want this win. That's what I like to hear from my drivers out there. I want to hear them saying, I want this win. This may never come again. And it'd be a great way for him to kind of sign off for McLaren this year, wouldn't it, with a win? But P2, he can't be too disappointed with that, surely.
Well, I'm conflicted as well, you know, because in those early stages in race one, if we want to kind of call it that, before that second restart, he was second on merit. And that by itself, before we had all of this carnage with Hamilton's penalty and Gasly going on to win, the race we already had was turning into a bit of a banger, with Sainz having a great start, getting in front of Bottas, Norris third, seeing the two McLarens second and third on merit was pretty incredible. So now when you look at it, second and fourth, not quite as good, but like you say, the fact he was so racy, really embracing the chili today, he was going for it. And half a second, he's had terrible luck this year. And I suppose if you want to look at it one way, he just got that a little bit unlucky that there wasn't that extra lap, that he couldn't quite get in DRS with a few more laps to go. But second place, the best result in his career, a fantastic result all round for McLaren. That comfortably pushes them even further into third place. I think they're maybe now closer to Red Bull than Red Bull are to Mercedes. So yeah, it really does paint a picture of just how good they have been over the last 12 months. And today, so unlucky not to get that victory.
Daniel Ricciardo sat there in his Alpine overalls or Alpine overalls or whatever going, wow, what a decision I've made. Got it right this time. Mercedes engine in the back of that McLaren as well next year, so that's going to be fascinating. I wonder if Carlos is sort of... There's some talk as a Manchester United fan, we're on to football, of Alexis Sanchez asking if he could have ripped up his contract after one training session at United. I wonder if Carlos Sainz has turned to his manager tonight and gone, can we rip up that contract? Can we stay here for another season? Because I think this is the place to be. I'm joking. But yeah, maybe there is. It's still Ferrari though, isn't it? He's going to be driving a Ferrari next year, which I assume will come good eventually. But, absolutely faultless. And I feel sorry for Carlos as well, because you've said it there. He's been so good all weekend. McLaren have been so competitive all weekend. I said in the qualifying watch along yesterday that they were a team to watch for the race, and he was on merit in P2, like you say, Dan, not a million miles away off Hamilton, even though Hamilton was probably just looking after things a little bit, to be fair. He wasn't being bothered by anybody behind. He was cruising along, looking after everything. And the timing of that Magnussen retirement, pulling over to the side of the track, which meant the pit lane entry got close. We couldn't stop, so that put him back down the field. He did brilliantly to fight back to second place, so phenomenal. I think he would have been P2 today regardless. So maybe actually more disappointed than I'm thinking, perhaps, because I don't know. How can you be disappointed with second place in a McLaren? It doesn't come around very often, does it? This is what we're talking about, conflict. And yeah, no conflict at all for Lance Stroll in third place. Thrilled for him. Second career podium, loves Monza, or seems to. I think he's a little bit disappointed that the win wasn't there today. He was in that second restart. I love the fact we got 2 races today. I love that. It felt like, didn't it, actually, a feature race and a sprint race is kind of what it felt like today. I like that. But the second start, he was on the front row, and I think I tweeted Stroll for the win or something like that, obviously jinxing the poor guy. And it didn't quite work out. Couple of mistakes on those opening couple of laps, fell back, didn't get the start he needed. So I think there'll be some disappointment there, especially with that Racing Point basically being last year's Mercedes. But again, it's third place. It's a podium. It's the best he could ever hope for if you get a couple of retirements in the top 4. So it's phenomenal. And it's really helped Racing Point out. I mean, that's 15 points on its own, so that's the penalty overturned already. So they're right in the fight for third place in the Constructors. Oh, I'm going to keep saying that, and I'm going to keep sighing, and I don't care if it annoys people, because I love Formula One so much. And then when we get races like that, where you just get the surprise winner, it's no issue at all with Verstappen or Hamilton. It's great that they keep winning and getting podiums. That's fantastic. But we want to see everybody fighting. And these don't come around too often, do they, Dan? So let's soak it up and enjoy it. And if it means sighing and crying and losing your freaking mind, then that's absolutely fine.
Definitely, 100%. And Lance Stroll, to be fair to him, I think he's up to 4th in the driver's standings.
Is he?
How ridiculous. I'm 95% sure, yeah. How ridiculous. I think he's level with Norris, so on count back with that podium.
57 points.
Yeah, that is madness. So yeah, nothing against Mercedes, but the occasional mistake, very nice indeed. But yeah, Stroll, on that restart, when he made that mistake at turn 5 chicane, I thought, oh no, he's lost it. He's had a quiet race, I think's more than fair to say, but got a little bit lucky with that restart. But hung on in there. Fought with Kimi Räikkönen like everyone seemed to do when they're working their way back up through the field, and maintained the gap to Norris really nicely. I think overall McLaren had a better pace this weekend, so it wouldn't have surprised me if Norris closed in. And the least we say about Bottas, the better, I think, today, and his overtaking ability. So yeah, Lance, you've said it for years, the driver perhaps with the most criticism on the grid, to pull out a result like this when Perez down in 10th. This is the kind of race you expect Checo to be right there in the mix. Solid drive from Lance today.
Well, he wasn't he, Checo? He qualified really well, and he was kind of on the fringes of the top 5 or around the top 5 for most of the race. I just wonder, obviously, with doing these reactions, we don't get all the press released in and can't really dig through data and things, but I do wonder if he's got caught out with safety car as well, and that's kind of cost him a little bit, because he was definitely right up there and seemed to be outperforming Lance. So yeah, that's something to keep an eye on a little bit later on. MD Games just asking in chat, is that race of the season? Look, Norris's podium was such an amazing final lap, wasn't it, in Austria? And looking back now, Charles Leclerc's second place was absolutely stunning and amazing, and quite a shock when you consider where Ferrari are at the moment. But I don't think anything can top that, just for the result, if nothing else, because that is, what's that? Alfa Tauri, McLaren Racing Point, and then McLaren again before you even get to a Mercedes, and it's Bottas, and then it's a Renault, another Mercedes, and then that's it all the way down to Albon in 15th with Williams's and Racing Points and Renault's thrown in there. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant race. So I'd say race of the season so far. Hopefully so far. Let's have more of this, please.
Yeah, definitely agreed. I mean, a bit of recency bias, I'm sure, and maybe in a couple of weeks' time, yeah, maybe we'll think a little bit different. But we had a fight for the lead for an Alfa Tauri and a McLaren. I think that just on its own qualifies it to be the best race of the season. And even, like I said a minute ago, before all the dramas, it was teeing itself up to be a nice little race anyway. So yeah, certainly race of the season for me.
Lando Norris 4th as well. As I said when I did the rundown, that if you just looked at 4th place in the results, you'd be like, that's a really good drive from Lando. And then you sort of zoom out and you go, Jesus Christ, what's gone on? But I think that's, again, a solid drive. And okay, not quite a podium, but 2.6 seconds off 3rd place in the end. So he wasn't a million miles away from it. But I mean, that's huge points from McLaren. Great drive from Lando, great drive from Sainz. And I think my favourite thing today with Lando Norris was we saw that he's not afraid to get his elbows out. I loved that into turn 1 against Valtteri Bottas, and then again at the second chicane, just like, look, mate, I'm coming through. You've got 2 choices here. You get out of the way, or we're going to have some kind of accident because I'm coming through, and they're wheel banging, and it's brilliant stuff. And that's what you want to see. You want to see these, if you like, midfield teams when they get these opportunities to go wheel to wheel with Mercedes to get their elbows out and take a risk, and that's what he did. Bottas, of course, sort of thinking about the championship, I suppose, still, even though he's still a fair way off. I think it's reasonable to say somehow Hamilton's still come away 47 points clear in the championship. Don't ask me how he's done that. I mean, come on. But stunning from Norris as well. And I think ignoring that top 3, you'd probably argue driver of the day.
Ooh, that's an interesting shout.
Ignoring the top 3.
Yeah, definitely. Lando, I mean, he's been Mr. Consistent this year, all the way through. And today, I think it's fair to say he was off the pace of his teammate. He was in qualifying. He seemed to be in practice as well. And early doors, like you say, getting his elbows out, that was great to see McLaren's getting involved with the Mercedes on pace and being able to hold off Bottas for the entire Grand Prix. That's almost as crazy as Gasly winning. Bottas is in a Mercedes. And yes, he had his issues following Norris and supposedly had a fair bit of damage to his car. I'm not too sure about that. You said a minute ago with Perez. We might find out a little bit more about that over the next couple of days. But it was nice to see the McLarens having a good bit of pace. And Norris will probably be gutted. He didn't manage to sneak on the podium. But yeah, certainly through no fault of his own, was holding off the Mercedes so well. Again, like so many drivers today, didn't put a foot wrong, and with everything seemed to be exploding, kicking off around everyone, did a great job of just keeping it in the lines, keeping it clean, and a huge points haul for the team.
Absolutely massive. I think that's pretty much not guaranteed them third. Obviously, I say consolidated. Of course, Stroll was on the podium, wasn't he? So Racing Point are 16 points behind in the constructors, but still they're looking good here, McLaren, for at worst top 4, but possibly top 3. So really good result. And Bottas was curious today, wasn't he? Because he had a really poor start. Carlos Sainz absolutely nailed that start, by the way. Breezed past him in a straight line. Then he got Lando Norris alongside him, and then all of a sudden Perez is coming through, and he just kept going backwards on that first lap. But he never seemed... Did a couple of overtakes, but I never really looked at where he was and thought he's going to recover this to get the win. Even after Hamilton had dropped back through the field after his penalty, I didn't believe. I thought Hamilton was more likely to finish ahead of Bottas, and Bottas was to get on that podium. And I know there's talk of damage, and so if there is damage, you have to take that into account. But it's not the first time we've seen Bottas struggling to overtake, of course, in Formula One. Must be noted as well that Mercedes assumed they'd be out front, so didn't need to worry about straight line speed. So that definitely compromised both drivers when it came to overtaking. But just this was his chance. I keep saying it, that Bottas has got to win. He has to win. And if Lewis Hamilton has a bad weekend, he has got to capitalise on it regardless. And he couldn't do that today. And, we can make excuses for damage. That's fine. If that's the case, then, of course, there's a reason for that. But he still needs to be... Well, like I say with Norris is getting his elbows out. Bottas needs to be doing that as well. And I think, he's got to think of the championship, and he doesn't want to fall out of the race on the first lap. But if there's a concern that car can't follow, as we've seen today, and can't get overtaking done, he needs to be a bit more defensive as well as being aggressive in the overtake. So really surprised that he was so far off. But like I say, after a few laps, it just didn't look like he could do it. And we saw it with Hamilton coming back through the field as well, didn't we? He didn't exactly breeze past some of those cars out there. So... Mercedes maybe it's something to do with the engine modes, because they haven't got the option to crank them up. Maybe that was part of it. Maybe they used to rely on that. But again, if you're a team that has locked out the front row and you're expecting to disappear out front and no issues whatsoever, which Hamilton was doing, then you're not going to worry too much about straight line speed, are you?
Yeah, I think this is going to sting, this one. I think he's going to look back at this at the end of the season and think this was a huge opportunity for maybe even a 10-point swing. It's a 4-point swing. Hamilton's only 2 places behind him. I mean, I kind of am lost for words with Valtteri. Yes, again, there may be some kind of damage. The extent of that, we don't really know. But the fact he couldn't get past Norris is surprising. The fact that there wasn't ever really an attempt to get past Norris, I think, was also a little bit surprising. I think the only overtake we actually saw was when he overtook Kimi Räikkönen, and everyone did that today. So when you look at it on paper and you think, oh, Hamilton's maybe not scoring points, I just thought he'd be a little bit more aggressive. It's been a criticism we've said for the last couple of years, that just go for it, Valtteri. And this was the perfect opportunity to do it, because not only was Hamilton down and out, Max Verstappen was as well. So not only was he potentially getting a 25-point swing on his teammate, he was also, in theory, going to put himself second in the standings. And ultimately, he's come away relatively, I don't want to say with nothing, but I really did think, especially on that restart, not necessarily this is Bottas's to lose, but certainly I thought he'd be fighting for that podium. And in the end, nowhere near, really.
I've got news for you, first of all, Dan. Hamilton got fastest laps, so it's a 3-point swing. It's even worse than you thought, mate. And like I said a minute ago, Hamilton, all right, Bottas has moved up into second place. Hamilton is still 47 points clear, as he was a week ago, I believe. I don't think that's changed. So he's somehow come away with... I'm going to do the maths live. Oh, my God. Get ready, people. This is going to be crazy. Let's have a look. So, yeah, 47 points clear. Still, despite the fact that and Hamilton was 30 seconds off the lead of the race after he had to serve that penalty, which we'll talk about in a second, and was, in the end, about 10 seconds off Bottas. It's a bit embarrassing, isn't it? Damage or not, that's still a little bit embarrassing. And it highlights the difference between Hamilton and Bottas. I don't think anybody is going to sit there and tell me with a straight face that Bottas is on the same level as Hamilton, because he's not, and I don't think anybody ever claims that he is. But it just highlights that gulf, doesn't it? That when Hamilton's angry and he's frustrated, he's going to come back through the field. He will fight. He will find a way into the points. Yes, only 7th place, but still into the points. Whereas Bottas, damage or not, I keep saying about the damage just in case, because I'll get thrown at me in the comments. Oh, he had damage, but whatever. He's lost to an Alfa Tauri, 2 McLarens, and a Racing Point. He should have been looking at that going, right, Hamilton's down the back, let's do this. Let's get on that podium at the very least. And he didn't. He wasn't a million miles away, of course, but he just didn't do it. So, yes, straight line speed was an issue for Mercedes because they're set up with their downforce, so they don't need to worry about it. Yes, there might have been damage, but if he wants to fight for a championship, he's got to find ways around that. He really has, and he should. I love McLaren. They've been great this weekend. Nothing against Racing Point, nothing against Alfa Tauri, but he should be beating them if the opportunities are there. So maybe something to think about for Mercedes for future with races like Italy, that things can go wrong and they might have to fall into the pack and they might need to look at straight line speed and perhaps making their car a little bit better in traffic. But we'll see. Daniel Ricciardo 6th. Kind of disappointed for Ricciardo in a way, because that Renault has looked so good in Belgium. We thought they were going to go to Monza and be a massive threat, but didn't really end up. But it's still 6th place, so solid result for him as well. We'll talk more about Renault in a second, but I want to talk about Lewis Hamilton more on Mercedes, because penalty. 10-second stop-go penalty for entering the pit lane. Yes, entering the pit lane when the pit lane entry had been closed. So Magnussen had stopped on the side of the track just at the pit entry with an issue. The safety car, that was a surprise, Dan, when I saw the full course safety car come out. I thought the virtual safety car at most. So they put the safety car out. Then they had to close the pit entry. But Hamilton and Giovinazzi both pitted despite that pit entry was closed. I was concerned for both drivers that would be a black flag because of what happened with Massa and Fisichella in Canada many years ago now on the pit exit. But it was pointed out on Twitter that we've seen similar things in the past that were given drive-throughs and stop-goes. So a stop-go penalty for Hamilton, that cost him, I think, 26, 30 seconds, something like that, right back to the back of the field, and that was the same for Giovinazzi. I'll ask the question, why not? Do you disagree with that penalty, Dan? I personally don't see any reason why I would, because it's a pretty black and white rule.
Yes, slam dunk penalty for me. I mean, part of me can see why Hamilton's frustrated, why Giovinazzi's frustrated, because they hadn't yet moved the car, but they had all intention to do so. The pit lane was closed. Hamilton, I mean, there was the safety car signs, and you can understand why, as a driver, he wouldn't have been thinking that. But from a team's point of view, they've got to be on that. They've got to know what's going on with that kind of situation. And maybe it was a little bit harsh for a penalty, but the advantage he gained for coming in the pits was massive. So there isn't really any other penalty I think they could have given him, because if it was just a 10-second on the road, he could have just done the restart, bounced off like he normally does, taken the penalty and still won. So I think this was by far the fairest way of doing it. And to be fair to Hamilton, I really don't think that was his fault at all, but that was a huge mistake from the team.
Well, the lights are in a weird place, aren't they? You often see the lights at the start of the pit entry that are red and green, so it was odd to see like a big cross, like Britain's Got Talent, on the outside of Parabolica. So that was quite an odd thing to see, but I kind of agree. I don't think that's Hamilton's, it's all right saying, well, he should have seen the light, and so should Giovinazzi, but they're going pretty quick through Parabolica, and they're relying on the team who got the notification. It came up on all the timing screens that the pit entry is closed. So Mercedes got that notification. They should have relayed that to Hamilton. And if they've missed that, then that happened. I suppose it depends where Hamilton was as well when they got the notification, because I'm pretty sure Hamilton was well out of the pits before anybody even mentioned. It had come up on the timing screens, but commentary hadn't picked up on the pit entry being closed until after Hamilton stopped. So it might have been that Hamilton is already on his way in before that notification crops up, and then it's too late. But I think the team, if they got it early enough, they could and probably should have shouted that. But if it's Justice coming in the pits, it's too late, because he gets another penalty if he cuts back out again, doesn't he? So difficult one, but it's a slam dunk. I don't think there's any debate there. It's not like a an argy-bargy, wheel-banging, scrap into turn one or anything like that, is it? It's it's like pit lane speeding. It's one of those rules that is going to be a penalty. As soon as you see under investigation 4, you're like, well, that's a penalty. There's no debate about that. But you've got to be honest. Whether you like him or not, people in chat or anybody watching, that's pretty impressive to go from 30 seconds off the lead and something like 20 odd seconds off last place to be 7th in 20 laps or something like that. I don't think that's a very bad result at all. I think that's an impressive drive. And the team projecting that he would finish 6th at one point, and they weren't that far off with that.
I honestly think he was one of the drivers of the day, which is weird to say, considering Lewis Hamilton finished 7th. But if you take away the penalty, and like I say, I'd put the blame more at the team's door there, smashed the first race, if we want to call it that, and the second race, yeah, it was, and yes, he's kind of got the best car, if we hadn't noticed already in 2020, but he was ruthless with his overtakes. And whereas Bottas was struggling so much to get past Norris and other cars, Hamilton, and yes, some of them were Williams and Grosjean and co, he was still making it look easy. And that move on Kvyat around the outside of Curva Grande, obviously Kvyat's teammate won the Grand Prix, not bad at all from Lewis today. And 2 places behind his teammate, damage limitation for sure. Well done today.
Yeah, I mean, you say he's got the best car, but it's the best car out there, and they were struggling with straight line speed, and Bottas was struggling to get moves done, so had to go aggressive, and it's paid off again. And like I say, still 47 points clear in the championship. So I'll throw it at you, Dan. Why not? Exactly the same gap as a week ago. Do you think the championship's back on by any chance?
I'm not sure about that one.
Tough one, isn't it? It's really tough.
Yeah, if this was a big weekend for us to get excited about the championship again, because even if it wasn't for Bottas, at a stage of this race, Max Verstappen was still well and truly in the fight. So, yeah, I hesitate to say it's over, because very easily we could have another couple of these races this season, but I think more than likely it's slowly coming to an end.
A couple of things worth mentioning just while we're on Lewis Hamilton in the championship. First things first, and massively importantly here, for Ferrari fans and indeed Michael Schumacher fans, he can now no longer match Schumacher's record of wins at Mugello at Ferrari's 1000th Grand Prix. So that's something of a victory for Ferrari today. They don't have to deal with that. Of course, I'm sure they don't give a damn, but you know what I mean, the Ferrari Michael Schumacher ties. So that can't be done at Mugello. Secondly, and I think probably more importantly, God forbid, we have any kind of issues with COVID going forward, we've now had the 8 races we need for this to be declared a World Championship. So whatever happens here on in, we've had a World Championship season. So I think, although I'm pretty sure we're going to get the 17 racing, Dan, I think it's significant that we've gone past that 8 race mark now that was so important in the regulations. So whatever happens, this is now going to be a World Championship season.
Yeah, that's a huge stepping stone, especially when you think all the way back to before we even started, we were so nervous we'd even get 1 or 2 races this season. So to get to this stage, yeah, in all fairness, it's been a great job. But to upset Schumacher fans, sorry, mate, it might not be Mugello that he equals it, but he could overtake it at the Nürburgring.
Oh, no.
Sorry about that one. That's the next one after the Russian Grand Prix.
I will be straight on the phone to the race stewards. Penalties for Gasly, Sainz, Stroll, Norris, Bottas and Ricciardo incoming. 100%. Yeah, they're all disqualified. That's it. Points for Williams as well. Yeah, that's a good point. Schumy's home race. I think there's a corner there named after him as well, isn't there? So that's... And I've got to be honest, in some ways, as a Schumacher fanboy growing up, that in some ways him winning it at the Nürburgring might actually be more fitting than doing it at Mugello or equaling it at Mugello in some ways. Kind of the passing of the torch. Is this me clutching at straws a bit? It could be. Nothing against Hamilton, but it's... I never believed Schumacher's records would get matched or anywhere near equalled, so quite an achievement. But let's move on from that before I cry. Esteban Ocon, 8th place, Ricciardo 6th, as I say. Interesting weekend for Renault. Expected more, Dan, but it's still a decent haul of points and does put them above Ferrari in the constructors. So financially, very, very nice. New name coming in as well, which is Alpine, Alpine or Alpine. I believe Alpine is what I've been told on Twitter. So we'll go with that. Certainly better than Alpine, that's for sure. But yeah, a little bit... I said perhaps the Renault result looks a little bit worse because you've got the likes of Gasly and Sainz up there on the podium, and maybe because they've been split by Hamilton, but they were kind of following each other along quite nicely, weren't they, Ricciardo and Ocon, and it was always looking like a solid result for them.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that because 6th and 8th is pretty good. I mean, have they jumped Ferrari now, or
They
they there
have.
or thereabouts? Got a nice little, yeah. So they got a nice little points haul in the constructors, but this would have been one of those races where you kind of would have thought, especially Ricardo, would have been there to maybe nick a podium, and for the first one for that team, and Cyril's tattoo that we never stopped talking about on Sky F1 last weekend. So yeah, from Ricardo's point of view, I think he's disappointed, but from Ocon's point of view, considering he started 12th out of the points, I think 8th isn't terrible. He would have been 7th up until a couple of laps to go with Hamilton overtaking him. So, yeah, I certainly think because we had that crazy result at the front, doesn't look so good. But this is another race where they've been consistently inside that top 10. Whereas in the first half of the season, it was a bit all over the place, really. Will Mugello suit their car? Doesn't quite look like it, but I think they can be happy they've come away with some good points here and obviously a great weekend last time out in Belgium.
Yeah, and like I say, ahead of Ferrari now, so it's something for them, isn't it? But I think Danny Rick wanted more. That's what I took away from his interview on Sky, that they wanted more today. But like 6th and 8th on a normal weekend is a very, very, very good result for them. So definitely looking good, and definitely more pace in that Renault, as I've been saying all season. And I'm glad to finally see it. So I like the fact we've got Renault and McLaren just knocking on the door of the top 3 and well, passing Ferrari. They are top 3 now, aren't they? Fighting for 3rd place. So very much something we expected to see last year with the Red Bull Honda switch, but it's this year that it's all happening. So great stuff from Renault again. Daniel Kvyat P9. I mean, what was he be thinking? That poor lad. He's like, yes, a couple of points. Who won? Your teammate. Oh crap. It's got me. I mean, I don't feel like I saw much of Daniel Kvyat today, to be fair. But P9, nice and racy. Lost out to Hamilton, otherwise would have been up there in 8th if Hamilton had not come back through as he did. I don't think that's an awful result for Kvyat. The problem is, a bit like Renault and saying the result looks worse than it is, his teammate won the race. So, I mean, unless you've got something on Kvyat that I've missed, because we missed him the other week, didn't we? So let me know, Dan. But I don't think that's awful. I'm really trying.
Yeah. I think the worst bit for Kvyat was when we saw him at the beginning. I don't know if you remember when Gasly was on the soft tyres, he was
course,
on the hard, and they were saying, "Oh, let Kvyat through," and we're thinking, "Oh, maybe Kvyat's on this alternate strategy." Oh, bless him! And he's going to beat Pierre. Finally, get some good points in the standings. He only had 2 before this weekend, so he's doubled his points, which is great. It's just that Pierre won the race, and Tsunoda had another good weekend in F2. So it just doesn't quite seem to be going his way this season. And you're right, it's not a bad drive today at all, because he did get a little bit unlucky with that restart and his strategy that he was on. 2 points isn't dreadful, but in the grand scheme of things, that's a huge points haul. Not only has he lost to his teammate, but he's also lost that midfield now. And I think it's going to be a huge fight. He's going to have a mega end to the season to get anywhere close, not only to his teammate, but the top 10.
Yeah, it's a good point, actually, on the strategy. I was watching that thinking, why are they not letting Kvyat through? He was on the harder tyres, of course, but he was clearly quicker at that phase of the race than Gasly was. But quite surprised when you consider that great strategy call by AlphaTauri to pull Gasly in just, as soon as Magnussen stopped, they preempted the safety car and they got him straight in. And of course, then that paid off, because then the pit entry closed and he's made his stop when nobody else could. So that was a massive moment. So that was a great strategy call. It's just a surprise they didn't let Kvyat through a little bit quicker, and maybe he would have been higher up. Perhaps he would have been somewhere around Ricciardo in the end, which would have been really nice. But I think he looks precarious, doesn't he, Kvyat? Maybe not to get the boot at the end of this season, but out of the 2 drivers, he certainly looks the more precarious of the 2, with the likes of Tsunoda coming through. And of course, Yuri Vip's getting his opportunity for a couple of races because of Sean Galeil's injury. So it's going to be tough for Kvyat. And I really like the guy, I do. And I've been saying for a long time he's a quick guy, but needs a little bit more. And he's been, even prior to the win today for Gasly, which I still can't quite believe I'm saying, he was being battered by Pierre this season, really. So he needs to step it up. And like you say, a strong finish is definitely needed. And Sergio Perez, 10th place. We've already kind of talked about him, so I'll quickly round that one up. I think possibly caught out by safety car, as a lot of drivers were, but he was running well prior to that. So I don't think he'll be disappointed with that result, but I don't think much of that can be on Checo. But like I say, when I get press releases through, I'll have a read. Maybe when Dan's talking, I'll check my emails quickly and see if anything's said. But I do want to touch on something. Go back to Racing Point. Lance Stroll didn't pit before the red flag and then was able to change tyres during the red flag period. That annoyed Lando Norris. He wasn't happy because that would have been podium for Norris, of course. He feels that he should have had to pit. The rules are pretty clear on that, Dan. How do you feel about the whole being able to change your tyres under red flags? I seem to recall we had this in Monaco a few years back when Vettel was struggling. You had Alonso and Button, and Vettel separated by about 0. nothing or something like that. It was so close, and then Vettel could change his tyres, and that completely changed the race under the red flag. So I know a lot of people don't like that rule, but they've exploited that rule perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be nice for Norris and Bottas as well, surprisingly. And it's not one of the best rules in F1, but I can kind of understand why it's there, because if you've got a car that was, say, involved in a crash that caused a red flag, and maybe their tires damaged or something, you're going to need them to, to fix that car, to strap on a new set. So it's not one of the best ones, and yeah, it kind of did take away from Norris's opportunity to get a podium, but they can all put on new tires if they want. Yes, Stroll's got track position, but that is one of the rules. That is the set we've got to play with, and I don't think it's ever going to change. So I think it was certainly a little lucky one today for Lance, but it's yeah, I'm not too bothered by it that much.
He played it perfectly so he could capitalise on the luck when it fell his way. There you go, I'll say it. We'll talk about Williams a little bit later in the stream because I think I want to give them a few minutes of chat. But I want to go straight to skip over Grosjean and the Alfa Romeos. We talked about them a little bit already, to be fair, on Alfa. But I want to talk about Alex Albon, more specifically Red Bull, and Max Verstappen. Absolutely miserable racing. Yeah, Max Verstappen struggling early on, a bit like Bottas in traffic, and couldn't really make any impression. And it's one of those races that kind of had Verstappen and Red Bull written all over it, didn't it, in the end, when you look at the result and you think, well, without the mechanical issues and without certain other things, Verstappen probably would have been up there challenging for the win, because that's what he does when we have these crazy races. So it's quite a surprise that he was struggling so much, but well down the order. And I've got the email from them through just to see if there's anything in here that obviously congratulating Alpha Tauri. So they talk about Alex suffered damage from contact at turn 1. Max got caught in the DRS train, which is why he struggled. Then he had an engine issue, which is why he ended up having to retire. So just kind of all went wrong for Max Verstappen. And we said it about Bottas, didn't we, that this was his opportunity. How different does this championship suddenly feel if Max doesn't have those issues and wins that race, with Hamilton down in what would be 8th place, of course, if you put Verstappen back into the order? That's a sudden massive swing in the championship, and it's game on for the rest of the season, especially with some of the tracks we've got coming up. So really disappointed for him, kind of gutted as well, because I think, with all due respect to Bottas, I think Verstappen is probably the more likely to take the fight to Hamilton in the championship over the course of the season, which seems crazy when you consider the dominance of that Mercedes, but kind of gutted there. But Alex Albon, I know he had damage, but it kind of couldn't have been any worse for him, could it? Not only does he finish 15th, but the guy he replaces wins the bloody race. The guy that people are talking about possibly getting the call back up to Red Bull, or some saying he should get the call back up to Red Bull, wins the race. I mean, as far as Grand Prix go, that's pretty bloody disastrous, Dan, isn't it, for poor Alex Albon?
Yeah, Red Bull all weekend. I don't think any of us... It's not one of their better tracks normally, Monza, but I didn't quite expect them to be 5th and 9th in qualifying. That was a nice surprise for the neutral. But you expect, Red Bull, second best car, they'll be able to fight through, especially Verstappen. Mercedes having issues, and you think, yeah, Max is going to be one of the prime candidates to get back to the front. But he seemed to have some kind of issue on that second restart, dropped all the way to the back of the field, a few laps later retired, and you do feel for him a little bit, because he has had a great season. He did miss out on that chance of winning that first crazy race at the Austrian Grand Prix, and this could have been his chance, like Bottas, to catch right up to Hamilton. Albon's side of things, not great. Not great. Another driver that struggled on that first corner on lap 1, having to bounce over the chicane, contact with Albon. And then lap 2, I mean, you said it there. Not only was it Gasly winning, he didn't score points. He was getting overtaken by Grosjean. No one wants that. That should not be happening when you're in a Red Bull car. And for whatever reason, he didn't quite expect Grosjean to be there, and he squeezed him onto the grass. He's got that damage. He's got a 5-second penalty as well. Just everything that could go wrong seemed to go wrong. And whereas on that restart, Hamilton managed to carve his way through the field, Alex couldn't even get past the two Williams and the Haas of Grosjean. So very, very surprising. He needs a good result. I'm sure this weekend is going to do him, not only from his performance, but from Gasly's performance as well. It's going to do him no favours with all the driver transfer speculation. So I kind of want to say one to forget for Albon, but also this is going to be a poignant race to remember in terms of his career and where his future lies.
He needs to use this, doesn't he, as a catalyst to kickstart his season now. He has. I know he had a good start, and obviously the incident in Austria possibly cost him a podium, maybe a win, but he has definitely slumped in this kind of middle of the first part of the season. However, whatever this season is, I don't even know. But he has kind of slumped a little bit, so he maybe needs to look at this and go, right, I've got to do this now. Let's go to Mugello. It's a track that I don't know who it's going to suit. I don't think many people do know who it's going to suit because it's brand new to Formula One. Let's try and turn it around that weekend. And he doesn't need to be winning the race or anything at Mugello. He just needs to be there. And he was looking fairly pacey. I know practice is only practice. That's exactly what it is. It's not qualifying. But he was looking pre-qualifying like he was kind of on the pace of Max and sort of only just snuck through Q1 and Q2, and then in the end was sort of 0.3 off Verstappen, which is, I think, kind of where he needs to be, 2 or 0.3 off. So I don't think it was awful. It just looked worse in the order because he was quite a few places down. But just a nightmare for him this weekend, and like I say, it couldn't have really gone any worse. That Alfa Tauri is, what do we reckon, 7th fastest? Williams,
yeah,
Haas. Would you say quicker than Ferrari? So maybe 6th fastest at the moment at certain tracks. So that Red Bull is clearly 2nd fastest car. It wasn't this weekend, but overall it's clearly 2nd fastest car. He should be well clear of Gasly in his race. I know it was a chaotic race and all of that, but we'll see what Red Bull decide to do. I worry for him, but I'm going to say something that might surprise and maybe is a rather controversial opinion. A controversial opinion, should I say? Opinion. I don't want Gasly to go back to Red Bull. I don't. The way it all ended there for him was not great. He's built himself up. He's performing absolutely superbly prior to today anyway in that Alfa Tauri. And that team, as we're seeing with Albon, is 100% built around Max Verstappen. And whoever gets in that second car is probably not really going to get anywhere near to Max Verstappen. So there's no real point in Gasly going there to end up finishing where he's probably finishing where he has been finishing anyway. So sort of 8th, 7th, 8th, 9th place or something like that. So I don't see the point in him going there to do that. I would much rather he saw out this season, maybe stayed on at Alfa Tauri next season, continue to build on that, improve the reputation that was hit quite hard after he's dropped from Red Bull. And then maybe, just maybe in the future, Renault, for example, might say, well, you know, if Ocon doesn't deliver, he's an option for the future. Or if Alonso decides after 2 years he's done and Gasly carries on, that's an option. Maybe Mercedes, it sounds crazy, but we talked about this last week, might consider him. McLaren, if anybody moves on. I think he needs to go and build his reputation at Alfa Tauri and then see where things are and what the lay of the land is in 22. I think going back to Red Bull is not going to do him all that much good. And I know it sounds crazy because they're the second best team on the grid, but like I say, I don't see him going to Red Bull and suddenly being on the podium every weekend. He'll be around where Albon is, which is most races where Gasly ends up anyway.
I agree with everything you've just said. Only thing, rare that happens, but the only thing I then worry about is from a Red Bull perspective, because this weekend, yes, they didn't have the best car, but this was a great opportunity for Alex Albon to get his first podium. Not only is he not getting his first podium, he's not even scored points today. He qualified 9th, and I feel Alex has the potential to keep getting better and to get closer to Max, but he needs to be doing well on weekends like this when Max isn't scoring, when Max isn't finishing. And I feel Red Bull, if this does continue, they do need someone like Pierre Gasly in the form that he's in at the moment. But I certainly get your point. I would hate to see Pierre go back to Red Bull, be clearly pushed aside as that number 2 driver. You're there to be seen and not heard, and him to lose all that confidence that he's had over the last 12 months. So I agree with you. I'd like him to have that extra year to keep building this confidence and move to a Alpine, whatever you want to call it. Move to somewhere like that, and for a team to take him on board as a race winner, as a driver they can build their future around, rather than them Gasly playing second fiddle somewhere.
Isn't Alpine a muesli?
I think so. My nan has them, I think.
There you go. Why not? Yeah, I just don't. And what's to say if you put Albon back in the AlphaTauri and Gasly in the Red Bull? What's to say that Gasly doesn't start to struggle and then all of a sudden Albon's bossing it in the AlphaTauri? It might be that car just suits Gasly's driving style and Albon's driving style better. So I just don't think there's. I don't know. I just think now he can just settle down. I think he could be there for quite a while if he wants to be. They are still the Red Bull Junior team, but not. I don't feel like they're the same way over the last couple of years as they were a few years ago when they were just putting so many youngsters in there, because I don't think they've got that many youngsters out there at the minute, Red Bull. So I think they've got Liam Lawson, haven't they, who's doing okay in F3. You've got Yuki Tsunoda, who's been quite a surprise this year, I must say, in F2. And then you've got Yuri Vips coming through too. So there's not a huge amount of drivers out there like we once had. So they're still a junior team, but not in the same way they once were. So I think they kind of, I suppose in some ways, I don't want to get too into driver transfers, he says talking about it for 10 minutes, but sort of almost like Alfa Romeo with Ferrari. Maybe they want somebody like a Gasly who can lead that team and then bring a youngster in to put alongside him, to learn from him, to go against him, to gauge his performance, and then sort of go with it like that, like Raikkonen and Giovinazzi or somebody and Schwartzman, Schumacher, Eilert, whoever gets it next year, or Gio might even stay, kind of something like that, but I don't know, that's a conversation for another day. We kind of talked about Alfa earlier, but Kimi Raikkonen was fighting in the top 3. At one point, Giovinazzi got that 10-second penalty. It was a penalty for Hamilton. It's definitely a penalty for Giovinazzi as well. But it was good to see Alfa being able to have a good scrap, actually. Alfa Romeo being able to have a good scrap this weekend in the race. We don't tend to see too much of them at the minute because they are often sort of right towards the back. So it was nice to see Kimi getting the opportunity again to get his elbows out and be a nice and scrappy with some of the top drivers or some of those top-end midfield teams. I quite enjoyed seeing Kimi back up there briefly. He went backwards and he dropped like a stone, the poor guy, but I enjoyed that, Dan, seeing Kimi back in the mix.
Yeah, and what was cool as well is I don't think they realistically thought they had a great chance of a podium, but they threw on the soft tyres. They went for it. They weren't messing about. And I think at the end that did hurt Kimi because he did just fall straight through the field at the end. But it was great to see him having a go and just to see Raikkonen there in the podium positions at Monza. And we said it last weekend, didn't we, when he overtook Vettel, how significant that was for Ferrari. But if Raikkonen had got a podium here and both Ferraris were out, goodness me, that would have been even more embarrassing. But I think Kimi started the season off quite slowly. I think the last couple of weekends he's been really good. And it's just a surprise, even after today, he's still on 0 points this season. But it was nice to actually see him on TV for once. And yeah, like you say, getting his elbows out and being a bit reminiscent of the old McLaren days, Kimi, was quite nice to see.
I agree. Absolutely agree. I'll do Williams in a minute. We'll talk about Ferrari in a second. Super quickly, Haas. Kevin Magnussen, for many, will be driver of the day because he pulls over to the side of the track and triggers all that chaos, which was fantastic. Enjoy that one very much in the end. Not Magnussen's retirement, but the fact that he managed to spice the race up. Grosjean, you already talked about him, Dan, nice and punchy. I suppose I'll ask you this before we get on to ranting and raving about Ferrari and then a bit of a chat about Williams. Are you happy with his performance as a Grosjean fan today?
It was all right. This is one of those opportunities where you kind of hope your underdogs manage to snatch a couple of points. And to be fair to Grosjean, he was awesome and racy with George Russell. Those two had some great fights today. And Grosjean isn't now dead last in the standings. So that's a slight improvement for him. But I believe Gene Haas was with the team this weekend. So yes, he was treated to an absolute barnstorming Grand Prix, but still issues with that team. Still after a race like today, unable to score points. So it's still quite disappointing from where they were a couple of years ago and even last season to come away with nothing.
Yep. I'm just leaving all the Grosjean talk to the Grosjean fan. I'm saying no more. Ferrari. Let's do Ferrari first. We'll do negative then positive, I think. But Ferrari, that's all the press release says. It doesn't really, obviously. But not only have they fallen behind Renault in the constructors now, they're only 14 points clear of Alfa Tauri in 7th. This, obviously, there is an issue with the power. We know that. Let's not get back into that. So they were always going to struggle at tracks like Monza and like Belgium, for example, or Spa, rather. So no great surprise to see them struggle. But I don't think anybody could have predicted it being this bad. And kind of, the car wasn't great. Vettel made no progress from 17th place even prior to his issues. Leclerc wasn't really doing much. In fact, he was being overtaken by the cars around him. Poor Seb Vettel then has brake failure. Again, I said at the start, not his fault, so not a lot he can do about that one. Went crashing through the polystyrene boards down at the end of that long straight. That was game over for him. And then Charles Leclerc, massive accident. Most important thing, he was okay. But I don't know, Dan, what happened with Leclerc. I've not seen anything. I'll have a double check while you have a quick waffle about Ferrari, but I'm not sure if that was a failure for Leclerc or if it was a mistake. But a rotten weekend overall for Ferrari, and that's an understatement.
Yeah, I've not seen the exact reason just yet. Losing it through Parabolica, there might have been some kind of issue with the rear, and like you say, it was a huge incident. Great to see him get out of the car as quickly as he did, and everything seems to be okay at the medical centre. You said a second ago, we'll talk about the negatives, then the positives. I don't really know what positives you're on about, to be honest. I think the only positive I can see is that it's over for them. It didn't start great with qualifying. What we knew coming into this weekend, it wasn't a circuit that was going to suit them. But to get no points isn't great. For Seb to not even make it 10 laps into the race, his final home race with Ferrari at Monza, that would have been a punch in the gut for him. And then Leclerc not finishing as well. I think they're very lucky no fans are there. Well, at least the only fans are there are cardboard cutouts, I believe. Yeah. If I was a Ferrari fan, it just seems to be getting worse and worse and worse. And look, Mugello could be a great circuit for them. They did well at Austria. They did well at Silverstone as well. I think Leclerc qualified 4th and he got a podium, didn't he? So, look, we could go to the next couple of weekends. And like we've seen all season long, one weekend team like Renault can be great. The next week, not so great. This weekend, Alfa Tauri have won. But how many times this year have they scored a big fat 0? So it's not over till it's over in Formula One. And hopefully for Ferrari, we go to a circuit where there's not millions of straight lines. There's practically none at Mugello, and that may play into their hands a little bit more. But really, considering this, well, the scenes that we saw here last year for the team, just disgustingly bad. And certainly one to forget.
The tweet at the time from Ferrari was Seb had to retire due to a brake issue, we know that, and Charles Leclerc crashed heavily at the Parabolica. He is okay, that's all they've said. Ended that with a race to forget. The positive news, Dan, before we carry on, was not really breaking news, it was an hour ago, but Scuderia Mission Winnow, Ferrari, horse, nose, muesli, something, announces that it has notified the International Court of Appeal of its decision to withdraw the appeal filed with the case, blah, 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 blah. So essentially, they have withdrawn their protest against the decision on Racing Point, which we expected because Racing Point withdrew their protest earlier today as well. So all of that whole Racing Point brake duct thing is now completely sorted. No issues. There's going to be massive changes to the regulation regarding what are listed and unlisted parts for next year so that it can't happen again, and copycatting cars can't happen again. So it's all sorted in that regard. That was the positive news, Dan, is we can finally stop ruddy well talking about Racing Point and their flipping brake ducts. Because I don't know about you, a little bit fed up of it. The politics are great in F1, but let's talk about some racing when it happens.
Yeah, agreed. And to be fair, Schumacher and the whole Ferrari Junior Academy, because I think won the sprint race as well in the end, thanks to a penalty, that's going great as well. So I suppose, yeah, there are a couple of silver linings for them. Not many.
It'll do, won't it? And I think there were some fans there, actually. There was some doctors and nurses, weren't there, as well? COVID-19 heroes who were there. So that was nice to see. It was nice to see fans cardboard cutouts or not, Dan, in the grandstand. I was waving. I was like, hey, people. Not real, but they were there. So, yeah, pretty miserable weekend for Ferrari. I don't really... I don't want to bash on them, but you kind of can't not because there's no positives apart from the fact that we've drawn their appeal. That's the only positive we can take from their weekend. They just weren't quick. And I'm hoping, like you, that Mugello, the second Italian Grand Prix, if you like, the Tuscan Grand Prix or the Tuscany Grand Prix, 1,000th race as well for Ferrari goes a little bit better. But I think I asked last Wednesday or on Wednesday if Ferrari had hit rock bottom. They're not bloody far off, are they, mate, after this weekend? I don't like saying rock bottom because they're not quite there, but I think somebody said in the comment section, if they're not rock bottom, their toes are at least touching rock bottom. They're really struggling. So somebody made an interesting point. I'm going to put this actually to chat. We'll move on to Williams in a second. I've got to ask this question. I love, obviously, going through comments because, you get your usual YouTube lot, you know what I mean, Dan? But most people are absolutely fantastic, and it's great to see some of the theories out there. Somebody putting the point across that perhaps Ferrari have realised their season is going to be trash, so they're going to make sure they finish a little bit lower for some extra wind tunnel time. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Ferrari would deliberately do that, but it's an interesting thought, isn't it, with the whole changes to the scaling of wind tunnel time coming up soon. Maybe finish a little bit lower, get a bit more time, sort the car out. I don't know. Not going to happen, of course, but...
Yeah, this is proper tinfoil hat territory here, mate. This is proper F1 word stuff. But to be fair, I don't think they're going to have much choice in a minute because they're going to have an incredible end to the season to get any higher.
Yeah, I don't believe it. I just thought it was an interesting point to make you think, well, I mean, that's maybe that's the positive, Dan. They finish a little bit lower, they get an extra couple of hours in the wind tunnel or whatever. However that's going to work. I don't believe that, don't worry. But yeah, miserable for Ferrari. Tears of joy. Tears of joy for Pierre Gasly. Lots of tears of joy for Pierre Gasly, I can't lie. But also a very sad and emotional weekend as well for Williams, Dan. I know the team have survived, and that is the most important thing, is those people still have jobs and they are there on the grid. But it was a final race for Williams with the family involved. So Frank Williams and Claire Williams, I suppose as of now, I assume midnight, because that's when the new board take over their responsibilities. Not literally, I don't assume they'll be there at midnight, but you know what I mean. No longer have any connection to that team apart from the name. It's a sad weekend. I know, again, it's the most important thing, and I said this yesterday in qualifying. Nobody's died, so we shouldn't be mourning it. It shouldn't be anything crazy like that. But it is the end of an era in Formula One. The last of those garagistas, those true independents, have fallen off the grid, and it's farewell Sir Frank. But I've got to say, the scenes with Claire Williams leading the car of Nicholas Latifi out the garage, I think she started up one of the cars as well, which was really, really quite amazing to think that she was doing that too. I don't think she's been a team boss ever. I might be wrong, starting up cars, that was a real moment, and she was full of emotion. I'm sure Sir Frank was as well, but I think I can say on behalf of the overwhelming majority, if not all, of the F1 community, thank you, Sir Frank, and indeed Claire, but certainly thank you, Sir Frank, a real pioneer in Formula One, and the Williams family will be sadly missed, and I'm gutted that they're going, but conflicted because I'm also thrilled that the team survives, that name stays, and they've got some investment for the future.
Yeah, it really is mixed feelings on this one because they have given so much to Formula One. When the news came out, I think, was it the middle of this week? I was really quite disappointed, to be honest. Though we've got the new investment and fingers crossed they can continue the development they've made this year and really push on for 2022. And it looks like finally there's quite a bright future for Williams now. They are losing what is, without sounding too daft, they are losing what is, in theory, the heart of Williams, Sir Frank and Claire, that have been at the helm of that team since day one. And it's not gone well for the last couple of years. And it would have been lovely. They got so close to that point today. And for George to finally get on the board. But what they have given to Formula One, not just the last couple of years, but since day one, has been incredible. And certainly Sir Frank and Claire to a degree as well, they will be remembered for all the great times. And I don't think it'll be the last time we see them in a Formula One paddock. And at least for Claire now, she's going to have some time to spend with her family and away from some of the stresses of Formula One.
I think that's what she was saying on Sky, that's because they're asking what now, and she was sort of like, Sir Frank has had to give up so much family time over the years, and bless him, he's not getting any younger, is he? And he's not a well man, as we know. He's sacrificed so much for Formula One and lost that family time, so now it's time to enjoy a proper retirement and spend some time with family. But it is a sad day, but the team survive, and that's the most important thing. It won't be the last time. Claire Williams will be at all sorts, probably at Mercedes at some point, and we'll still see them around, I'm sure. And we'll never forget Sir Frank. What an absolute legend. What he did as well with that team is phenomenal. And I always forget, are they second or third most successful of all time? I think second most constructors titles, unless I'm completely off with that one.
I think you're right. Yeah.
But still, one of the best teams of all time. So phenomenal when you consider they were a true independent. Race-wise, Nicholas Latifi, so close to a point, but equalled his best finish of 11th place. George Russell down in 14th, but again, was nice and racy with everyone around him. So good to see Williams. I think we said this about 7 weekends on the bounce now, but it's good to see Williams have taken that step forward compared to where they were last year, and it's good to see them be able to fight with Alfa Romeo and Haas and apparently Ferrari now, as it seems to be. So it's nice to see, but I do kind of gutted they didn't get a point today. I don't care who got it. It would have been great to see one of them P10 or something.
Yeah, that would have been really nice. And I mean, it's great that they've technically today beat Red Bull and Ferrari, and certainly it's a million times better than last season. Even though they got a point, even if they end up with 0 this year, they can go away knowing we have made improvements. And yes, this new investment will probably not quite feel right for the first couple of years, but it's still the Williams team, the Williams name, all the same employees for the most part, staying at the Grove. So fingers crossed that they started off in the right direction. And yeah, they thought they'd really struggle here in Spa, and it's not all doom and gloom. So things are going in the right direction.
Awesome stuff. Absolutely. And good luck as well, of course, to Sir Frank and Claire in all that they do. I'm not going to get all emotional again. It is, I don't care. Call me a wimp if you like. I think it's emotional. End of an era. Williams were a massive part of me sort of growing up, watching them battling with Michael Schumacher and so many drivers as well coming out this weekend talking about, and personnel, Ross Brawn and Toto Wolff talking about their links to Williams. So many people seem to have some kind of tie with Williams. That's the impact that they had in the paddock. So, yeah, and of course, Michael Schumacher literally had several impacts with Williams in the past. Bless him. So, yeah, absolutely. Good luck to them and thank you for everything. But it's time to move on. Driver of the day. One surname in chat, you know what to do by now. Who is your driver of the day? Dan? I mean, I think it's a tough call, but I have a feeling I know which way most people are going to go.
It's going to be Pierre Gasly. It's got to be. And I'm sure you're going to mention some more names in a minute, so I don't want to take him away from you. But there was so many great drives today, but the pressure he was under, and not only just today, but the past 12 months, 18 months, what a story and what a journey this man has been on. To hold on half a second, just cross the line in front of Sainz. Fantastic drive today. Almost, I think, of what we've seen anyway, 0 mistakes under all of that pressure. Really was magical.
Yeah, 100% Gasly. I can't not. Even if he'd kind of gone out there and dominated and hadn't done anything massively special, I'd still be saying it because he's won the bloody race. We don't see it very often. But no, I just think the way he soaked up that pressure from Sainz as well, absolutely brilliant. So Pierre Gasly for me. But you can't, again, you say I'm going to mention names, but you can't not look at Carlos Sainz and Lance Stroll and Lando Norris being up there and Hamilton's drive back through the field. It's so hard not to look at those drivers as well. But 100% Pierre Gasly for me. I think give him everything. Why not? Let's have a look at what you guys are saying. Max saying Stewart who called the pit lane to be closed. Fair point. A few people say Magnussen as well. Jimmy says Gazman. Eric says Gasly. Thomas says Sainz. Samar says Gasly. There's going to be a lot of this. AS says Gasly. Warren M says Sainz. It's Gasly for NCF buses. Scroll down a bit further. Jamie says Sainz. Bright Flare says Gasly. Albert says Sainz. Michael says Gasly. Tracy says Gasket. Gasly, I assume. Yeet says Sainz. Enforcer Nebula says Sainz. Hanu says Gasly. Cramron says Gasly, easily. David and Lee, Gasly and Sainz respectively there. Molly, can only be Gasly, completely agree. Nuke Dukem, I always just want to say Duke Nukem, but yeah, Nuke Dukem says Sainz. Thomas says Sainz. Jay goes with Carlos. Ben's gone with Gasly. Charles has gone with Magnussen, of course. MD Games goes with Gasly. JJJPPP goes with Gasly, or Triple J Triple P would have done. Elliot says Sainz, Gasly, Norris and Hamilton all deserved driver of the day. Gasly stunner. The McLarens ran 2 or 3 on merit at the start. Sainz needed one more lap. Norris held off Bottas and 8 passes in 12 laps for Hamilton. I know I said one surname, but I wanted to read that comment because it's a fair point. So, yes, John gone with Gasly. Sam's gone with Gasly. Couple more. Let's scroll down a little bit further and say Lorraine has gone with Sainz with a little papaya love heart there. Very nice. It's great to see McLaren up there fighting again. I just beam every time I see it. It's been so long, or feels like so long. A Cringe Lord is going Gasly and Sainz. Get on that fence. Why not? Sort of thing. That's my job. Get off that fence. That's my fence. Anthony Bilb says Lance Stroll. So many deserve it out of that top 3, don't they? Anybody saying anything different? Obviously, we've got our usual funny ones in with your Ericssons, and of course Stein Van Dorn saying Stoffel Van Dorn. Of course, Stoffel Van Dorn. He's always driver of the day in my heart. Anyway, let's move on from that one. And JP Pritchard says Hamilton. A lot of people saying Gasly, and there you go, Dan. James Stockdale, Grosjean. Perfect way to finish driver of the day there. Yeah. Also, yeah, I think Gasly, it seems to be the popular choice there, but Sainz is in there as well. Fantastic race between those two. If you've got any questions, please do pop them in chat. I'll read some of those, and that's a great opportunity as well if we've missed something massive from the race to let us know, and we can talk about that one. But do feel free to pop your questions in the chat. Super quickly, I think we've had quite a few watching today. I think we're up at nearly 3,000 at one point, so thank you so much to everyone for tuning in. Please do drop a like on the stream at some point soon before we end the stream. That'd be massively appreciated. Really helps the channel out, and it's a real boost. I love doing these live streams, so it's great to get that positive reaction as well. And please do subscribe if you're new too. Lots of content coming up over the rest of this season, and yeah, I've caved. They're back next weekend. Begins with the W, ends in a long. Don't worry, they'll be back next weekend. I'm kind of glad I didn't do a race watch along today, Dan. I think I'd have just passed out. I don't think I'd have handled a live stream on that one. It was absolute chaos. It really was. I was on my feet for the whole thing, like, oh my God, I can't watch this. And then I'm still watching. So that's not great viewing. That's not great viewing. But yeah, so yeah, please do subscribe if you're new. Massively appreciated. Can you think of anything, Dan, that I've forgotten? Probably there'll be a lot.
There's going to be loads.
Yeah. That's why it's a reaction, not a review.
Yeah, there's probably a million things and people probably screaming at us. There's nothing off the top of my head I can think of. Maybe Lewis Hamilton and his scooter antics during the red flag. That was quite fun. But
that was fun, yeah.
Apart from that, yeah. On-track stuff, I think we've covered most of it.
That most was a very brave word there, mate. I'm not going to lie. Yeah, please do remember when you're in the comments later or whatever that this is just a reaction. It's not a review. I haven't got everything through yet, so we do. The press releases come out so late for some teams. Like the Red Bull one came in about 30 seconds after the race, so I swear they make those quotes up. But the others, yeah, definitely not coming just yet. So question time. I need some music for that point, don't I? McLaren to win in Bahrain, kind of home race, says Kieran. That track might suit the Renault Power Cars. Renault Power Cars doing well on power tracks. My God, what do you think of that layout, Dan? Are you looking forward to Bahrain too, or are you a bit like everybody else is going? That's going to be terrible and a nightmare. Imagine quali.
I think it's going to be really good. I'm really looking forward to it, to be honest, and I don't mind if I'm in the minority. I think normal Bahrain's great, and I think I've said this quite a while. There's nothing against trying these new circuits. If it's great, brilliant. If it's rubbish, we've only got to do it once. And next year we can come back and do the normal route. But I think it's pretty much a box more than an oval. It's going to be what I would assume 3 DRS zones, and that's practically it. Why not? Should be a bit of fun.
Qualifying will be hilarious. With all the backing up in Q1, because they're all going to want a toe, because it's just straight, isn't it? I mean, don't forget, it is oval-like. Whatever. It's not oval-like at all. Yeah, so that'll be interesting. Couple of super chats to do. Michael says, Albon had a 1 second per lap damage, said Helmut Marko. So that will contribute to some of his pace issues, that's for sure. Elliot, thank you very much for your contribution as well, mate. Thank you to Michael too. He says, Bottas struggled to pass anybody today. Lewis made 8 passes in 12 laps. In any other race, he would have won Driver of the Day without doubt. It was a Turkey 2006 style. Good shout. Suji says Gasly bagging a podium and a win before Alexander Albon. Ouch. And also massive shout out as well too. Everyone who put in super chats last week, I forgot to read them down. I said it on Twitter, so I'll do them now. Suji said last week, say it everyone, you're all missing Nico Rosberg. Actually quite interesting to read these now. Everyone was so downbeat after last weekend, and it's like, oh god, here we go. Not feeling that. Nico Rosberg across Lewis's garage. Curious to see the new tracks for 2020, Mugello, Imola, etc. can provide a chance for more excitement as they are unknowns for all teams and drivers. That's from Razza, so thank you very much for your contribution. Granny Annie says, oi Dan, what's wrong with Granny's driving? Yeah. Dan was massively ageist last week, attacking granny drivers. And AP, thank you for your contribution as well, says Formula Mercedes, Formula Max, Formula One. Lovely stuff. Couple more just come in. Sujith again. Charles admitted that he lost the car and put his hand up and said it was his mistake. The car had no downforce and difficult to drive, probably. Yeah, no, there wasn't any word, was there, of a technical issue, so that could be what that one was. And Suffering Addict says, tinfoil hat stuff. Could it be that Ferrari is trying to protect Leclerc from the Italian media by not revealing that it was a driver error? Thank you for both your contributions. I can answer that now, Suffering Addict, by giving you Sajith's super chat. Leclerc's held his hands up already, so it's an interesting theory, but I think if Leclerc's held his hands up, that's already been disproven. I just clicked onto the main screen. There were 1,997 viewers are watching for just a second there. That's 1997, the last time Williams won a championship. How lovely. How lovely. I love stupid shit like that, I really do. A few questions from you guys then. Why not? Astro says, Bottas' future now is with the team next year, isn't he? So, curious again that the contract's been signed and he appears to have dropped up a little. Do you think there's anything in that, signing a contract? We saw it Kimi Räikkönen a few times in the past, signs the deal, gets himself secure, and then seems to lose a little bit of pace, or is it just pure coincidence, do you think, Dan?
I'd love to go all tinfoil hat and say there's something in that, but in all fairness to Bottas, he did do a good job yesterday. He was so close to pole position, but in the race, he just seems to be lacking that little bit of edge at the moment. So maybe it's not too far off, because you're right. Ever since he got that contract, I don't want to say he's been nowhere, but he really has struggled this season. So yeah, maybe you're onto something there.
Doesn't help that Lewis Hamilton's your teammate either, does it? Really, I suppose.
No.
No, I think possibly coincidence, but we could dig deeper on that, I'm sure. See what's going on. Should we pop some Williams B-roll on? Why not? We're doing Q&A. Might as well keep using it, even though it says Rocket on it. I know. It's all we've got. Nuke says, opinion on Toto Wolff calling for more obvious signs of closed pit lane for teams and drivers. For example, red lights at start of pit lane, flashing red lights on trackside boards, and so on. I think most tracks do have the lights at the entry to the pit lane, so I was quite surprised. When they showed the replays of him coming in the pits, I was looking for the light in the pit entry, so I was quite surprised as the big crosses on the, if you like, flag boards around that corner. It's certainly not in the best position at Parabolica. That's the first thing I would say. Secondly, only 2 drivers pitted and not everybody did. So obviously other teams were relaying that information. But I think there needs to be, even if you've got those pit boards on the outside of Parabolica, there still needs to be something on pit entry for me, Dan. There needs to be something there that the driver and the team can see clearly. But then, as Crofty and Martin Brundle both pointed out, even if you have the red light at the pit entry, it's too late at that point. So you need something before that, because you can't pull back out the pit lane.
Yeah. My issue here is 8 out of the 10 teams were fine. I'm trying to think. Yeah, even Ferrari were fine. So it can't be that much of an issue. But then you've also think, surely it's not that bad to put a little traffic light like they have at the other end of the pit lane. Surely that's not too hard. So I think Mercedes will look back on this, that they'll recognise their mistake. They'll move on. The championships are fine. But yeah, maybe a little light wouldn't hurt too much.
Just got the press release from Racing Point. Perez said, from my side, it's a disappointing day. Anything that could go wrong seemed to happen to us. I had a poor start at the beginning of the race and lost places to the McLarens and Bottas, but then things started to look up for us. Lando then slowed down excessively. That's something we need to talk about, Dan, in the pit lane during the pit window, which I think was dangerous, and we had a slow pit stop, and that was costly. Max also crashed into me at turn 2 after my stop, and he damaged my car. So after the restart, I had to drive with the damage. So we had damage, and then was held up by Norris on pit entry. No penalty for Norris on that one. We've seen it given before for driving excessively slow on that one. I was quite surprised, actually, when I saw the replay. Obviously, the stewards have the data, and if he's going fast enough, they'll know that for sure. So there's no major issue there, is there? If the stewards have seen the data and it says, no, he was fine, then no penalty is fair. But it did look quite excessive from a viewer's point of view.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen the replay a little bit further before, maybe just before the parabolica, if it started there. Like you, I think the stewards wouldn't be silly in this kind of incident. They would have had all the data, all the telemetry, and it wasn't as if he was brake checking Sergio, but it was quite slow. He did gain an advantage from it, so I was also surprised it wasn't a penalty. But yeah, the stewards, you'd like to think, have all the data there and made the right decision.
Yeah, there we go. Answered that one. Tony Touch says Bottas is secure. That could be something there. Let's have a look at some of your other questions. Do some Formula 2. I might do a stream at some point every now and again, Dan, if you're ever up for that. I'll put you on the spot live. We'll just talk about F2 for a bit, just to keep it separate from the F1 stuff a little bit. But yeah, do you think Haas will keep K-Mag, or is he losing, or is he long gone, this season? That's from LOL. I wouldn't be surprised to see Haas make a complete change. I really, really wouldn't. I think there's some good juniors in F2 that they'd be able to bring on board. You know, the obvious ones, your Schwartzmans, your Schumachers, your Ilots. I think there's some good drivers there. There's potentially, Hulkenberg's available. There's potentially Perez available as well. So there's some very good drivers on the market too. So I think this is the first year, and I don't know how you feel, Dan, as a Grosjean fan, but this is the first year for a while where I've really felt like there's enough talent out there to put lots of pressure on Magnussen and Grosjean. And the first time I've really felt that they're precarious, both of them.
Yeah, I've said it a few times this season. I feel they're lacking that little bit of star quality, and races like today, you'd like to think they might be able to just snatch a couple of points. And if they had a Hulkenberg in that car, a Sergio Perez, if he gets booted out for whatever reason, I think he's fine now, but if he is available, I think you've got to change at least one of those drivers. And like you mentioned, there's so many names you've just said there. There's Logan Sargent as well in Formula 3, an American driver, and that might be something they're really interested in doing if he gets enough super license points, if he wins the championship. So yeah, when you look at the whole host of talent, and we're not just talking a couple of drivers, we're talking 5, 6, 7 drivers that could jump in that car and do a solid job. I think there's at least one change coming, and yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if they had a complete change for next season. There's
going to be a mad battle for Perez if Vettel gets confirmed at Aston, isn't there? A mad battle.
Definitely.
Where does he go? Alfa Romeo, if Kimi retires, they could do with that experience. Haas bringing in Perez might be a good shout as well. Maybe Red Bull, throwing a crazy one in there, might consider Perez if Albon can't get the results. Again, had damage again today, so as pointed out, was a second off according to Helmut Marko, so that's part of that, I suppose. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see on that one. Your favourite overtake of the race, says Warren M. Mine was Ricciardo on Bottas. Is it Ricciardo? I'm sure it was Ricciardo on Bottas, yeah. Great move. There was some good moves out there, but I loved Norris's move on Bottas as well.
Yeah, I was going to say Norris on Bottas. I think I said earlier, I'd really like Hamilton's on Kvyat as well.
Yeah.
On the outside of Curva Grande, but he did have a bit of a car advantage there. So yeah, Norris really getting his elbows out. That was a bit of a cracker.
Well, you say a car advantage. Hamilton finished 7th and Gasly won in that car, so, you know.
Very true.
No other reasons behind it. It was all on pure pace, I promise. Imagine seeing that result, tuning into the stream now and seeing that result on the bottom and just going, what? That's a typo, surely. That can't be right. Haas to Renault engine in 2022, says Carb. I I'd be surprised. I think they quite like their tie with Ferrari, even with the problems they've got now, because they get a little bit more, don't they, than just the power unit. But I tell you who could end up with a Renault engine going forward is possibly Williams. Renault don't have... They're going to become Alpine, the muesli, as we're calling them today. Alpine. I'm sure it's Alpine, people have told me. So they're getting that name changed. But they haven't... They'll still be a manufacturer, but they don't have a customer team after next season. So maybe Williams, a cheaper deal with the Renault power units. George Russell, off he goes to Mercedes in the future. They don't need to kind of keep that tie with Mercedes if they need it. So it wouldn't be a bad idea, having a constructor that can focus solely on you, if that makes sense. You've got to, instead, because obviously Ferrari have got Haas and Alfa, and Mercedes have got Racing Point, McLaren next year, and Williams. Williams are kind of not top priority in that, are they? So it'd be nice for Renault and Williams to maybe work together. Williams-Renault, of course, their last World Championship title triumph was with Renault. And their last win.
Yeah. And to be fair, the Renault engine this year has been much better in a straight line, but their biggest issue over the last couple of years has been reliability. And unless I'm being really stupid and I'm forgetting loads of issues, for the most part, I think they've been pretty good. I think Ricciardo had an issue in the first race, Ocon in the second race, but I can't really recall anything massive for McLaren. Last time it was an exhaust issue for Sainz, but nothing really power unit wise. And over the last couple of years, they've been dreadful with reliability. So yeah, for a team like Williams, considering Renault are going to be the only team next year with a Renault engine, why not? Might be worth the gamble.
Arzar says, good to be honest, after one lap I was hoping for a nice boring race when nothing happened so that we could see McLaren 2 and 3. Quite weird that, isn't it? The second and third, let's end the race now. No more racing. I think a lot of people wanted McLaren to get... I mean, I still think second and fourth is a mega result, and so close to the win as well. That's crazy, isn't it? 0.4 of a second, just to remind you, on that one. So, yeah. Should Tsunoda be thrown right into a Red Bull to test making the Alfa seat stronger with Albon and Gasly? I can't see Tsunoda going straight up to Red Bull, if I'm being honest. I could see him replacing Kvyat, probably not next year. I still think most of the grid is going to stay pretty similar in some ways, because some teams, because do AlphaTauri need to risk putting a junior? Then again, 2021 could be the perfect year to do it, Dan. To be honest, I don't think Tsunoda's going straight to Red Bull, but I think he's certainly got a shot at Kvyat's seat.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, he's been a huge surprise this year in F2. Wasn't mega in F3 the year before, but he's been really, really solid this year. And this very weekend was on for a really big points haul until I think he had a power unit issue in the sprint race. So I can see him moving up to F1 definitely next couple of years. He's proven he's got the speed, he's got the ability. Next year, I think it's all going to just depend on how strong Kvyat ends out the season. If it continues like it does, being smashed by Gasly in quali and not really anywhere close in the race, I think why not bring up Tsunoda a year early? If he gets the super license points, that is, of course, because it is so close in that fight for the top 4 in the standings in F2.
Ruby says, can we discuss Mercedes changing the back of the car during the red light? I think it was a like-for-like change, wasn't it? Unless I've missed something. As far as I understood, that was a like-for-like change with some vents. I don't think... So they've changed the parts, but they've not changed... They've put newer parts in, but they've not changed what the parts were, as far as I'm aware. Apologies if you're tuning in later and that turns out to be false, but I think that's the situation. So I think it's a bit like tyres. You're allowed to change certain things on the car. I think, go back to Monaco that year we were talking about, they were rushing to fix Lewis Hamilton's rear wing, weren't they, under the red flag. So we see lots of changes as normal. I don't think there's any issue there. I don't know if they added more cooling, but if they... I suppose they can, actually. I'll be honest, Ruby, I need to go have a dig through the rules on that one, but I'm just wondering if they can do, because does part firme end as soon as the lights go out?
I think so. The only thing I think that will help them is they had one of the stewards down there with them, didn't they? So I'd be very surprised if they get any kind of penalty or anything for that. But yeah, like you, I'd probably have to do a bit more digging.
Yeah, leave that with me, Ruby. Sorry, that's not a great answer, is it? But yeah, leave that one with me, definitely, and we'll have a look. I'm pretty sure they opened up the bodywork to improve cooling, says Nuke. Yeah, it was definitely something to do with cooling. Absolutely was. So we'll keep an eye out. I'll keep an eye out and have a read. We're going to finish on this question though. A couple of people asking about reverse grids. Kind of saw that today, didn't we? Because we had the first start was the proper race, if you like, and then we saw with the second start a bit of a reverse grid with Stroll on the front row and Gasly and co so far up, and of course Gasly going on to win. It's not answered the argument completely, but it's certainly shown us that if you, and I mean, this will come as a huge shock to so many people, but if you put faster cars behind slower cars, the faster cars are going to be trying to get through and will get through and might give us some actual racing rather than the slower cars trying to catch the faster cars. It's phenomenal how that works, Christ, Dan. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of the idea of... I love qualifying. I said it yesterday. I love the qualifying format we have now. I don't want to change it. I think it's brilliant. I don't want a reverse grid on a Sunday because I think that takes away from the main Grand Prix. However, this year was the perfect year to trial it and see if it works and answer that question. It's like Imola. Give it a go. If it's crap, never go back again. If it's brilliant, we can have that conversation. It answers the question, do reverse grids work? Let's give it a go. I think that was worth a go. One of the back-to-back, so either at Silverstone or at Austria, the perfect time to test that. And if it's rubbish, you never do it again. But we saw today that we get some pretty thrilling racing when cars are out of position. But they're out of position, Dan, because of mistakes made and poor timing under safety cars and red flag, all this kind of business. So do you prefer the idea of artificially, if you like, putting cars out of position, or do you prefer seeing... Do you think it's a bigger moment if Mercedes make a mistake, is what I guess I'm saying, than if you put them out of position because they happen to be leading the championship?
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning of the year, if you'd have asked me this, I would have been all for them trying it. And I agree with you. Those double headers were a great opportunity, but I understand at the time they wanted to get those 8 races done and dusted. And so, like, now we have a championship and it's all fine and dandy. No issues, no asterisks next to the season. But after today, no, I don't really want any changes. What we saw today and yesterday to a degree with Sainz third is proper F1. And if we had a reverse grid, what we saw today with Gasly winning, Sainz second and Stroll third, yes, it would be great, but it wouldn't quite be as special. Whereas what happened today, Gasly won a Grand Prix on complete merit. No handicaps, no extra modes or anything like that. Pure pace, little bit of luck sprinkled in, but that's what Formula One is. So, yeah, after this weekend, I don't think it really needs it.
I bloody love this job. I really do. Buddha Boy says, reverse grid is like turning your boxes inside out on day 2. I bloody love you. Like, you're fantastic. Yeah, it is. I suppose it is. But no, I agree. I know he got the win taken away, but Dan Ticktum today said in his qualifying, his post-race interview in F2, that's the second sprint race he'd won at the time. I now want to win what he called the proper one. If you have a reverse grid on a Saturday and Gasly wins it, yay, well done, Pierre. That's going to mean so much less to him than winning the race on a Sunday, the proper Grand Prix, where the big points, the real points are handed out that matter for the championship. I kind of take Martin Brundle's point that if you do that, you force teams like Mercedes to build cars that can follow. The problem you've then got is when Mercedes fall out of position or Red Bull fall out of position, they find it easier to get through the pack again because they've got a car that can now follow and is the quickest. So I don't think we need to be doing reverse grids. I think it would have been nice to try it just to answer the argument, because if they're not talking about track limits on Sky, they're talking about reverse grids. It drives you mad if you haven't got Sky. It's all they ever talk about. So it would have been nice to just put that argument to bed and give it a go. But thinking about it now, like you, Dan, start the season all for it. When you look at this result, do we really care if Gasly, Sainz and Stroll are your top 3 on a Saturday? Yeah, okay, that's pole position for Gasly, but he ain't going to stay there with Bottas 5th and Hamilton 7th. Do you know what I mean? Takes that shine off. Yeah, weird. I don't know. I can't. I just want to try it, though. I want to try it once. Just once. Maybe in Russia. Let's do it in Sochi, because that's going to be a rubbish weekend anyway. So let's try it for Sochi. But yes, we will leave it there. Super scroll through. No, sorry, just checking chat, see if there's anything like a major, somebody going, Sean, you forgot to talk about something or whatever, but it doesn't look like I've missed too. We'll have missed loads. I know we'll have missed loads, but yes, definitely. And if you haven't watched the race once again, please do go and watch it. But yes, that is it, Dan. Thank you for joining me, mate. I know we're going to be waffling for 15 minutes afterwards for patrons in what we're calling the cool down room. Oh, yeah, that's a good name, bringing that back. But yeah, I think I enjoyed that race more than I was ever expecting to. It was massively emotional for so many reasons this weekend. Phenomenal drive from Pierre. But, mate, it's Mugello next. We've got a track we've never been to. This could be pretty epic as well.
What a difference a week wakes, crikey! That proves how crazy today's been. What the difference a week makes. I mean, I still can't believe what we've seen. Pierre Gasly's a race winner. I mean, that is baffling. So yeah, thanks as always for having me, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure today. And yeah, Mugello next, Nürburgring, Portimao, so many great races. Fingers crossed anyway, coming up in the next few weeks. So yeah, thanks for having me, dude.
Just chop Sochi out, and we've got a hell of a run to the end of the season, haven't we? If you think about it.
It wasn't that bad last year, so maybe it'll be good this year. And Bottas is usually quite good there, so it might not be that bad.
Championship back on. You heard it here first. Yes, thank you very much, mate, and I'll talk to you in a few. Appreciate it as always.
No worries. Thanks, dude. See you later, chat.
Awesome stuff. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in as well. Massively appreciated, as always. Like I say, Mugello next, which I'm very excited for. Can't wait for Mugello. Love a new track in Formula One. And if you are a patron, don't worry, we'll have the cool-down room out for you at some point next week as well. Finally, an exclusive. See, I do keep my promises every now and again. Mackin90 very quickly with a last-minute super chat. Thank you very much for your contribution. Says, demoted to the junior team, only to beat Hamilton at the line and score his first podium, and then his first win a year later. Great job, Gazzy. That's kind of the perfect way to end the stream. Very well said there. Thank you for your contribution. Phenomenal race. And like I say, Mugello next, so things could get even more exciting. But congratulations, Pierre Gasly. Great drives from Lance Stroll and from Carlos Sainz in second place, of course. And also farewell to the Williams family. And thank you for everything. Now, I will be back later, or next week now, aren't we? Later into next week with some more content. Of course, lots of live stream as well, or live streaming coming up next weekend with watch-alongs returning too. Certainly a quality watch-along, and hopefully all being well, we'll get one for the race too. So make sure if you're new that you are subscribed to the channel so you don't miss out on any future content, and please do drop a like on the stream before you disappear. That would be massively appreciated. And you can of course follow me over on social media, and all of the links you need for that are in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll catch you again in the next one. Bye bye.